Hey guys, thank you for joining me in this video. Today we're going to be talking about the new Orqa FPV.One goggle, FPV.One Pilot. Sorry, the name is hard for me to remember for some reason. Anyways, these are the new goggles from Orqa, and this is an analog goggle. I specifically purchased these with my own money, and I was going to be comparing them to the HDO2, which is made by FatShark, which is basically the tried and true version of analog goggles that have been around for the last 7 to 8 years. And this is the newest iteration of them, which is a couple years old now. So I was hoping that the new goggle would be, although it is from a different company, it has very similar specs and has a lot more features than these goggles. And I purchased these to compare them so that I could maybe replace my old analog goggle with something that's more up to date. If you're here to determine whether or not I switched, I can tell you right now that the field of view was my main concern. And although these have so many more features and they offer so much more than the FatSharks, the field of view of the image is significantly less in my mind. It's about 5 degrees. These are 37 degrees field of view and this is 43 degrees field of view. And I still prefer the larger field of view, but it is something that I'm used to. So if you're new to FPV, or maybe you're flying on a goggle that has a smaller field of view like an HDO2 or a FatShark, an older FatShark like an Attitude or something that has a smaller field of view, then these may be perfect for you. But for me personally, I'm not going to be switching from the HDO2s because I prefer the larger field of view. We'll talk about field of view a little bit later when I'm comparing the two, but as of right now, I'm just going to talk about what comes in the box and what these goggles are all about, because I find that these goggles are really great and I honestly have very few complaints with them. But I'm just going to kind of show you what I experienced when I purchased them, what I got when I ordered it. So again, I paid $569 for these, and then shipped from Get FPV. It's about 2 days from my house, so about 620 bucks. I got the goggles. It came in a rectangle. Open the rectangle, and you got this thing. You open this guy, and the goggles are inside. They don't come with a FPV module. Neither do these. These are 500 bucks. These are $569 without a module. You're looking at another $150 for a module, maybe 40 bucks for antennas. So again, it's like an $800 thing if you're trying to get analog goggles, even in today's world where digital is pretty much taken over. So analog is a very unique thing. It's very specific. Very few people out there that are getting into FPV as a new thing are buying analog. So again, this does have the potential for HD, which we will talk about later. But as of right now in 2022, you're comparing these as analog goggles, and that's why I'm comparing them to this goggle rather than maybe the DJI goggle. So again, you open the goggles, you get this, you have no module. This is a Fusion module made by TBS, which I slapped in there and I 3D printed. Actually, a friend of mine, Stuka, 3D printed this plate for me, and it works. And the stock plate is for a rapid fire, which is made by Immersion RC, which Orqa has some kind of connection with, and they use rapid fires in their goggles factory. So the one that they made for this goggle was a rapid fire module door. When you open the box, you'll notice this cool kind of slate gray color. The older goggles came in a couple different colors. They came in blue, black, and light gray, and I preferably just hated all of them except for the black goggle. And I thought black as a dark color would get a little hot on your head, which I did find out that was the case. I think I may be biased because I've been rocking white goggles since 2014 when FatSharks first came out. As far as the Dominator V1 was black, but every goggle after that was white, and I just find a lighter color on your head brings in less heat, causes your face to be a little less hot. So darker colors I don't necessarily love, but this color does look really good. So slate gray, very cool color. It also comes with a couple different faceplate foams. So generally, when you buy a set of goggles, they come with different thickness foams so that, maybe your face is a little bit more rounded or a little bit flatter in some places, and they have different thickness foams. This doesn't necessarily come with different thickness foams, but it comes with 2 different foams. It comes with a neoprene and it comes with a faux leather. I personally always like neoprene. That's what I use in my goggles. You can see on my FatSharks here that it's like covered in sunscreen, because I wear sunscreen all the time when I go out on my face so I don't age super quickly. And anyways, yeah, just protect my white skin from the sun. And yeah, these, I put the neoprene foam on, works really well. Super nice fit on my face. I generally like the fit of these just as much as I like the fit of my FatShark, so I can't complain. These are a great contour for whatever you would call curvy faces. I don't know. So the next thing is you'll notice that these do have diopter and interpupillary adjustment. So you can see the interpupillary adjustments here where the actual lens is moving out and inward for different shape faces, and then the interpupillary adjustment, or sorry, the diopter adjustment is gonna move the lens. So the interpupillary does this, and diopter moves the lens like that so that you could have a light prescription and possibly get around not having to put a diopter lens in there, which in the case of these goggles, they do have little slits right here where you could potentially put an extra diopter. So if you wanted to, you know, maybe your prescription's -8 and these go to -6 or something, and you needed that extra little bit, you could slip in a diopter and get away with not having to wear any prescription contacts or something within these goggles. So that would be kind of cool. The FatSharks do not have that feature. If you can't adjust them based on, you know, whatever is available, which these do have less adjustability than these, then you're kind of screwed and you'd have to wear contacts or however you would get around being able to see with those goggles. So these are more adjustable. The optics I think are super clear. I really like the optics on them. The one downside that I find with the optics is they're a little bit deeper, and that's really the main difference between the FatSharks and the Orqa as far as the field of view is concerned, is the actual optic is deeper to the screen. So they both have the same screen. These both have OLED screens. They're both a very large screen, but the optic depth, because these are super short and your eyeball actually touches these lenses, it makes it to where you get a little bit larger field of view. It's like sitting 2 or 3 rows in front of the person where you're sitting maybe in the movie theater. Like if you're sitting, say, in the middle, directly in the center, and then you move a couple rows down and you're closer to the screen, same exact scenario. So really, same screen, just different optics, and that's really the difference between these two goggles. The one cool part about the Orqa is, though, I find with the FatSharks, if your eyeball will touch your eyelash for sure will touch the lens. I find when I go to clean the lens, which is very frequently, I'll take like a cloth like this, and I go to clean the lens, and it ends up pushing the lens back to 0. Or not to 0, but it pushes it back to where it's out of focus because I adjusted it for each eye to be in focus, where these goggles don't have that. So it's got a piece of glass in front so that, you know, the diopter adjustment is like a set it and forget it thing. Once you set it for you pretty much just put the goggles on and you never have to worry about that moving. Now, the only downside is because that extra piece of glass and because the optic is a little bit deeper to accommodate that particular style of optic that they've gone with, and the protection of not being able to push the diopter when you go to clean the lenses, then you're gonna have to deal with the extra little bit of field of view that you're gonna lose. So, you know, this is 37 degrees field of view and these are 43 degrees field of view. So, or yeah, 37, 43, so 6 degrees difference, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in perspective over the amount of field of view total, I find it to be, you know, significant for me at least. But again, like if you're flying a goggle that has a smaller field of view already, then I don't think you're gonna have a problem with these, and the image quality is really, really good. I find that I haven't been able to adjust, they seem a little bit more washed out, even though it's the same screen. I feel like it's kind of like comparing Sony and Canon. So like these would be the Sony and these would be Canon. You know, everybody's always complaining about, oh, so color science on Sony is not nearly as good as what's on Canon, and you can never compare Canon to Sony because the color science. Well, I know that there's probably adjustability to get it close, but I feel like the adjustability, these right out of the box are really, really crisp and saturated, and these are a little bit more washed out, a little bit more on the log or the flat side. You can, you know, hold this toggle down here and you can adjust vibrance and you can adjust color in the actual screen for when you're looking at the FPV lens or the FPV screen. And I did find that it was adjustable, but I didn't really notice that it was adjusting much. I did play with it for quite a minute and I wasn't able to figure it out as far as how to make it more like that. But it wasn't bad, it was just I was used to a more saturated image, so I was trying to make it more saturated. I'm sure it can be done, I just had a problem figuring it out. So again, that's not fault of the goggles, it's probably just user error. Now, outside of the optics and outside of the screen, outside the foam and everything, the one downside, I did find that other than the field of view, the biggest gripe of me was the stock strap. I think this strap is trash. I generally would just take it off and replace it immediately, and I'll give you my reasonings here. First of all, this is fully as tight as it'll go, and it's okay, but it barely fits around my head. Like it's tight, but I could go tighter. I would prefer a goggle strap that got tighter. Again, this is like fully locked down as tight as it'll go. This is like barely locked down as tight as it'll go, and you can see that's about the size of my head, and we're at fully tightened. So if you have a smaller head, you're putting these on a smaller person, a child, you know, somebody with just a smaller head, these are probably not gonna work for you anyways. I'll go to full explosion mode for like people that are wearing full face helmets that apparently are trying to put these goggles on, because I don't know who the freak's head is this big, but yeah, the goggle strap has got way too much adjustment for me. I think that they didn't really understand the content of how to, or they're not even the concept of how to make a strap that fits a normal human head. So yeah, the strap, again, I don't like it. I think that the battery situation is bad as well. I'm gonna not spend a lot of time on this, but I did want to show you this because it's not very good. You put a battery in, you plug it in. It's not even in the hole all the way. You put this on your head and it's already stretched out. Like it's gonna fall out eventually, especially because it's putting a lot of tension on this cable. It could, you know, potentially mess the LiPo up, and it's not even in. Like this is, as you can see, it's not even in the holder. So it's eventually gonna fall out. It does have little rubbers in here to keep the batteries from falling out, but just like the way that it's designed, it's not really meant for this type of battery. Again, if you're putting a battery on your head, you don't want a lot of cables, so you know you want a short cable. So I don't understand what kind of cable they're using or what particular battery they were using. But yeah, for the one that I use and the one that most people use is probably not gonna be okay. It'll work, but it's not ideal. And then the next thing is it has this little detachable thing here where you can change the strap pretty easily, or maybe take it off and wash it. But because of that design, this is so far back that it basically sits right over your ear. So when you go to, you know, put this strap on, you generally have to run the strap higher on the back of your head to get this off of your ear. And when you do that, it pulls the goggles in a weird way, and it makes it hard because the optics are pretty long. So you want to make sure that the optics are very squared up with your eyeballs. And when you start pulling on the goggles like this, it becomes that the optics get kind of wonky on your face. And then you're like looking down the barrel of this tube, because there is a tube. If you've ever used a pair of FatSharks before, there's like a cylinder that you're looking down, but it's kind of subtle. On these, the cylinder's a little bit more pronounced. You see more of the barrel because the optic is longer, and when you're not perfectly square with it, it can be a little awkward. So again, the strap, if you replaced it, no more issues. But again, for the stock strap, I thought that was my biggest letdown other than the field of view. But other than that, these goggles have a new menu system that's super intuitive. It's got a couple new features like this thing called deep focus, where you go in and you can, you know, like adjust the focus of your goggle based on a high quality image rather than looking at the image from your FPV camera, which can be difficult sometimes. My way of getting around that with these guys is I just focus it on my OSD, and once I focus it on the OSD, there's not any more you could focus it. The OSD is always either in focus or it's not, and if the OSD is in focus, then the rest of the image is going to be in focus. But there's a gimmick thing in here where you can adjust your focus based on a super high quality image. It's like a bridge in the woods over a water, like over a stream or something. It's really cool and it works well, but I don't know if it's necessary. And then the next thing is these have a 60 FPS DVR, which is super cool because this has a 24 FPS DVR, which is complete trash. The DVR is amazing, and I really wish that the field of view was slightly larger so that I could switch to these, because that DVR is like generally what I'm missing from these goggles. Yeah, so I'm sad that these don't have the larger field of view. The other thing is there is some like, you know, external modules that you can plug into here where you can run like Wi-Fi to your phone, and you can actually live stream, which was available on the first generation. And I'm sure that they're going to be coming out with other modules and things that work with these that make things super compatible with smart devices and just make your life that much easier if you're trying to update firmware, so you're not having to do some weird SD card crap that, I don't know, maybe these do. I've never even heard of updating firmware on FatShark, but I know that on these you can update it pretty regularly, and they do have regular updates, so that's really cool. You can do it through your phone if you have the little module, which I think is sold separately, so there is that. And then the other thing is it has audio, which the first generation had audio as well, but since my complaints because I'm like one of the few people in the world that use audio with an FPV drone, I had a problem with the first generation. It was so loud that I could literally have the earbud hanging out of my ear and it would still deafen me. So they fixed that problem. It works really well now. I set my volume to 1 and it works perfectly with my little earbud here. Now, other than that, it does have this weird feature that's kind of gimmicky, but it works. you turn off your quad, and generally when you turn off a quad and you have audio, it just goes to static and you just hear in your ear. It's not super loud, other than when you immediately turn the goggles on, it's super loud, but then after it turns on and boots up, it's all fine and it's super quiet. These guys, it just turns off. It doesn't, it's not staticky anymore, but if you're near a quad that has a channel that's close to yours, you'll hear their static. So I guess it's looking for a signal, and then once it sees a signal on the channel that you're close to, it will start giving you audio again. So if you have someone on DJI on say channel 2 and you're on race band 8, which is what I was on when I was testing these, I could, you know, as soon as he plugged in the quad, I could hear the doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, like coming through rather than just silence. So that is, you know, again, not necessarily a problem. It's a fix, but it's not necessarily a 100% fix in all scenarios. The other thing is, I still think there's too many buttons. There's just too many damn buttons on this thing. Every time I put it on, I'm always like, where the hell are these buttons? Where my fan? And I'm always thinking I'm gonna turn the goggles off. And also, I mean, it may be a personal thing, but I rock climb a lot and I have really thick calluses on my fingers, and this doesn't feel like a button. Like if I'm not touching it, or sorry, if I'm not looking at it, I can't feel any difference of a button on these. Like this is not, I can't even tell that's a thing. So if I were gonna use these on a regular basis, I'd probably just take a little piece of skateboard grip tape or something and put it on each of these buttons so that at least I knew where they were when I was in the goggles. And I'm sure maybe people with less calloused hands would feel these and be like, oh yeah, that's a button. But it just doesn't really feel, it may be this paint too, it's kind of a matte paint, and it just really doesn't make it intuitive to find these buttons. I know they are uniform across the top on both sides. They are like mirrored, but still, like when I have these goggles on, I find it very difficult to find the buttons. Even with the V1s, I had that problem. And I just think there's too many buttons. But again, yeah, the fan works. There's a new fan in this one. It works really well. I was fogging out yesterday on both sets of goggles, and this thing got like rocks in it. It was just like, but it was working. And this was super quiet and didn't really, it did dry my eyes out a little bit, but it worked well getting the fog out, which was ultimately what I'm here for. Other than that, yeah, these goggles are super impressive. I love what Orqa is doing. I appreciate everything that they are doing on making new hardware. But again, like I wish that the field of view was bigger. I know that they are coming out with some HD stuff. It's more like proprietary HD stuff for Orqa, so that might be a super cool feature where you can run their module and it would be able to run some kind of HD system, which would be cool. However, you know, I think DJI is going to be really hard to beat. Not that I have any like money in the game or any kind of, I'm not rooting for DJI. I'm just letting you know that DJI has the Chinese government behind them. And, you know, they're going to be really hard to beat, especially by a small company, you know, out of Europe building things like this. So, you know, I salute them for trying, and I salute them for what they're doing. And I think pushing the industry forward and the hobby forward with making products like this is something that needs to be done. So thank you. And if you've ever created a product or even had any hand in creating a product, you know how difficult maybe something like this would be to create, countless hours and countless, you know, people working on something like this to create it and perfect it. And there's always going to be little problems that you just can't always go back to the drawing board. You have to eventually release something so that you can start on the next project. And this is a really, really good iteration of a set of goggles for 2022. I just personally think that the field of view was such, since I'm so used to these, it's just not adequate for me to switch to them. They are a little bit heavier than a FatShark. These are 300 and something grams, like 310. These are like 350, 360. So it's not that big of a deal, but if you're used to FatSharks, you might notice that. And then, yeah, man, I'm disappointed in myself that I'm so locked in on a large field of view that I can't get around, you know, using something like this. I really, really tried. I bought these. I was like skeptical on whether or not I was going to be disappointed. I contacted Orqa and I started talking to them about these guys, and they offered to like send me a free pair because they knew I paid for these, and they're like, we want you to try them, just open them up. And I was like, I feel like I'm going to be disappointed by the field of view. It has nothing to do with the feature set or anything like that. It's just the field of view is what I'm really concerned with. And I mean, unbeknownst to my realization unbeknownst to my you know, my prediction, it, you know, it is what it is, and the field of view is smaller. So unfortunately, that is what I have to tell you guys, and that's why I'm not going to be flying these instead of these. So yeah, I appreciate you guys watching this video. I appreciate you watching my channel, and for all the people that have supported me over the last 8 years of my life and helping me essentially make this a career. I had no idea when I started this as a hobby that it was ever going to get to this point, and I refuse to do product reviews, especially paid product reviews, because I think that degrades the quality of my channel, and I just want to give you guys my opinion, whether or not you care for it or not. You know, making these videos makes me happy. I enjoy going back and watching them, and you know, seeing what I was doing in that point in my life, maybe even a few years ago, is significantly different than it is now. So I appreciate everything from you as fans of mine and people that just watch these videos and listen to me talk about products, even ones that I'm just, you know, that I purchase and use. So thank you, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next video, and have a great new year. Well, it is a new year, but have a great new year, 2022. See you guys.
Don't you know